They used to be just for the family album at home, but now photographs taken by proud parents are shared widely and sometimes seen by millions. Is that right? Is it safe? This is Roundtable. Very good to have your company. I'm David Foster. For any proud parent, sharing photos of your child or your children is a pretty natural thing to do. But the internet has transformed how we do that, who gets to see them, and who perhaps makes money out of it.
"14% of all American mothers blog about parenting, according to Scarborough Market Research. In the UK, 37% of newborns have an online life of their images and videos. Some of these parents cash in up to hundreds of thousands of dollars by working with brands and monetizing their children's pictures. For instance, a baby might model a clothing brand or a paddling pool. Nearly 2/3 of parents in the US agree that online photos could end up in the wrong hands, according to the computer security firm McAfee. But 40% believe it's their right to post images and videos without the consent of their child. These children are now social media stars, with millions of followers viewing and liking their photos. Do parents have the right to post pictures of their children, or are children's rights to privacy being ignored?
So let's get talking. With me at the round table we have Vicky Shotbolt, Chief Exec of Parent Zone, which works to help families navigate the internet safely. Kerry Northcott is here too, mother and social media influencer, along with her daughter. Jen Persson is here too, the director of Defend Digital Me, a campaign to improve children's data privacy and digital rights, and Graham Music, child and adolescent psychotherapist. And Graham, you'll be able to tell us what harm, if any, you think this might be doing, what the pitfalls are for young people and hopefully for their parents. Welcome to each and every one of you. I discovered a word, because my children are grown up now, I discovered a word looking into this that I'd never heard before, and it seemed creepy to me, and it was sharenting. What do you make of that?
Oh, it's a whole new world of language, all these new experiences online. Sharenting is very, very popular. I mean, you've got huge amounts of parents putting everyday photos on Facebook with their friends, with their family, but it's a whole different world again where you're starting to try and use that for promotional material and promotional purposes.
Yeah, I suppose not creepy to you. I mean, something you're familiar with, Kerry. So why do you do it? Your daughter's called what?
Ivy Coco.
Yeah, and does she know what she's doing for a start?
I don't know.
She's out there with lots of pictures of her.
Yeah, I don't know if she really fully understands it. She quite enjoys it, and she loves having her picture taken. It's something that we've just always done since she was 6 months old.
Well, we'll get into a little bit later on whether, in fact, since she doesn't really understand it, it's right to include her in this, and that's where Graham may come in. But why do you do it? Let's have a look at a couple of pictures.
Okay.
Anyway.
I think parenting can be quite lonely. I found it starting off when Ivy was a baby. I was on maternity leave. I didn't have any friends that had children, and it's connected me to people that we have the same interests, and it has actually...
The picture we're looking at here, I think, got 1,800 likes, and I think you can decide who sees the picture on Instagram, whether it's people who are part of your club, if you like, or whether it's anybody and everybody.
Yeah, if you have a public profile, then anyone can go on
and what is it with this
have
one?
Access. I've got a public profile,
So
yeah.
anybody can see those pictures?
Anyone can see our pictures, yeah.
Okay. Is that dodgy?
Yeah, it probably is dodgy, but, you know, we're at home, she's
This
with
one got 8,000 likes.
Yes. You know, she's with me and she's at home. She's not in any harm. I'd never, you know, school aren't allowed to share pictures or use any pictures of her because of, obviously, we do social media, so I don't want people to know what area we're in, to be able to check up on school websites and stuff. So, you know, I do what I can to keep her safe. I'm not going to bring, and if there was a time that she didn't want to do it, or there was a chance that it could bring any issues, I obviously wouldn't do it. It's my child, you know, she's safe and she's loved.
But you make money out of this.
Yeah.
Hopefully one day she might make some money out of it because you might be
Yeah,
putting some to one
she does
one
make
side.
money.
But it's commercial. It's some might say exploitation.
Yeah, I know. I feel like it's such an awful negative term, exploiting your child for money. You know, it's just a very negative term. And if she doesn't want to do it, she doesn't do it. She's not involved in all paid campaigns. You know, like photo shoots, I don't really see it as any different as a child being signed up to a modelling agency. Those pictures nowadays, if you shoot for Next and you don't have a social media account, your pictures will still be on social media, but with Next. That is the way the times have moved, and that is this generation. So obviously it's different because I talk about parenting, any struggles or emotions or feelings.
Because you're also a blogger.
Well, I don't really blog, but
Well,
yeah.
what have I got? Your page here, and it talks about
Yeah,
fashion, hair.
Yeah, that's my Instagram, but
makeup.
it's not
That's-
classed as, that's not really blogging. Blogging
Well,
is
you
different.
put it out there.
Yeah, I
about
put it out there,
makeup,
yeah.
home, kids' fashion, etc.,
Yeah.
etc., etc. It's not just photos of you and Ivy Coco.
No, yeah, there's lots, I talk about lots of stuff.
Do we want to now get into what the problems can be? Kerry seems to be responsible here. I'm sure you are. Yeah, you love your daughter to bits.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Don't want to see any harm come to her. But what are the possible consequences for anybody putting pictures of their children out there?
It's a really tricky one, and I don't think it's a creepy word, but I do think it reflects that desire that parents have to share parenting. That's essentially what it is. You know, parents who are joyous about having a lovely, lovely child, they want to share it with the whole wide world, and it's an instinct that I think we could all sign up for and understand. The difficulty with it is there are privacy issues, so young people grow up. My son did it. He's 20 now, bless him. He was cute when he was 5. He's a grown-up 20-year-old bloke now who objects and describes himself as a digital hermit. So there are privacy issues around sharing your child's data. There are actual practical concerns. So Barclays did some research that said by 2030, they reckon that 2/3 of all identity theft will be linked to sharenting. And then there's a space that you're putting your child into. And
Say that again. See, when I saw this, I found it quite extraordinary.
It's shocking, isn't it?
2/3 of identity theft will come because people have put out pictures of their children there for the world to see.
Yeah. And actually, if you think about it, it's kind of obvious that, you know, you're telling everybody birth dates, you're telling them locations because of geotagging, you're putting up personal information, you're building a data cloud about your child that is a gift for an identity thief. So there are those sorts of issues too. And then there's the nature of the internet. The internet is a great big space that's got an awful lot of very nasty people in it. And a lot of those nasty people like looking at pictures of children. Yeah. So for all those reasons, and in the context of it being a lovely, joyous thing to do, but for all those reasons, is it risky? Yes, it is.
Is it about parents not really thinking about this, not knowing what's best for their children?
Think it's...
I mean,
I
and
think
again, we're not directing this at you. We're talking about the broader subject. I promise you, Kerry, we're not
and
picking on
we're
you.
all involved. I work with many parents, over the years who are much more fragile than you.
Yeah.
And will do all kinds of things for immediate gain from very different motives, and will put their children at risk in all kinds of different ways, including, and this will just be another way.
Yeah.
I think I've got a kind of a larger worry about the whole thing, which is, I know the times have changed, but we're living in a world which is much more based on appearance, much more based on how people are seen. People's value of themselves is much more based on how many likes they got. I've got patients who, if they don't get 400 or 500 likes within a few hours, they take their pictures down, and they're not even real pictures because they're so highly edited.
Yeah.
But they don't have real relationships. So when you said that you were lonely as a parent, you found a way of managing that. But some people find ways of managing it which aren't really managing it, and it becomes addictive. So there's something addictive about the way in which we put these things online. Yeah. And it fuels systems in our brain around the dopamine system, for example, which means we can't stop, we keep looking, keep going back. And I think for somebody who's got less things of value in their lives and are more fragile, then there are real risks, I think. I mean, I also work at a less savoury end of the world, which is working with people who use pornography, who are addicted to pornography, who've been convicted, people who stalk, those sorts of things. That's part of my work. And I know that they'll use any images. So I think there's a whole other area there that we could be thinking about. But so I think there's a bigger global one, which is actually we're creating a world in which people, the more you feel good about yourself as a human being, the less you need the approval and the likes of the external world.
Are these parents, some of whom you refer to as being lonely, living in a virtual world, are they taking into account at all the interests of their children, or is this child neglect?
I think, well, it's neglect to the extent that if if you're full of your own unhappiness, then you're not able really to be present to your child's emotional needs. And so it's much more important for me as a parent then to get likes, get approval superficially, rather than be present with myself or my children. Because unless I'm happy and fulfilled in my life, I'm not going to be able to give my child what they need, and they're not going to be fulfilled and happy human beings.
Jen, I know you want to jump in, please do, but then I want to bring in Gwyneth Paltrow in just a second. But
She's just out here.
Great. Well, in fact, celebrity is spot on, because, you know, what's it doing to children who kind of look at this view of the world and see celebrity as something they want to aspire to?
Yes.
And it's a real challenge, I think, for young people. But there was a really interesting report last year by the Varkey Foundation that said children's happiness, they measured children's happiness globally in 20 different countries. And only 3% of children answered that they felt celebrity and fame was something they aspired to and made them happy. So I think we don't need to worry too much about these things. Yeah, they were much more concerned about issues like world peace, war and conflict and scary things in the world that they were looking at. So I think that's a good thing. But the risks for children, you can't paint them all the same. I think you need to look at, you know, if a child, for example, if you're in a relationship trying to escape a domestic violence situation, if you or a friend of yours puts a photograph of your child online, you could put them at real risk of being identified and found. Whereas if somebody finds that, you know, they think their child is being posted on Facebook, on social media with perhaps face paint, and you can't identify the child. And interestingly, you know, your friends might know who the child is, but you also have to think, does Facebook know who the child is? Can they identify them through facial tagging and geometry of the face and so on? Companies like IBM are taking thousands of, in fact, 1 million photographs from Instagram and Flickr. It was Flickr recently. And IBM had used those 1 million photographs to train AI and tag that photograph.
I will use Gwyneth Paltrow in just a moment, but does that frighten you, what you've just heard from Jen?
What, the pictures
they're being used the whole time.
Well, yes and no. Like, you know, my child is safe, and so I see it as a very different sort of way. There's no harm being brought to her. There's nothing, you know, she's at home, she's safe, she's loved. You know, as I said before, this has opened up an option for my husband to be home more.
Yes.
So our way of life is better.
Explain how it works then. This is part of your means of supporting the family. How does it make money? How does it bring an income in?
So we would get contacted by a PR company or brand saying we'd love to work with you on this sort of campaign or promoting this product. If it's something that I use and it's something that a brand I would like to work with, then I'm like, okay, what do you want?
But where does your daughter fit into this?
Well, if it's, so the next campaign that I worked on.
Clothing brand.
Brand next it was called the Happy Hotel, their new campaign. And it was about stuff that makes you happy, not in the big picture, small things that just, you know, bring you a little bit of happiness. You know, Ivy likes it when we dress the same. She loves that. She wants to dress like me. That brings me happiness because she's happy. Silly little things, a brightly coloured dress. So for that, I included her in one of the posts of us kind of coordinating clothing. All the other posts were just of me. If it's something that I feel like I can include her with, then we'll do it. Clarks, we're working with Clarks. So she will be promoting.
And does she get asked whether she minds, a la Gwyneth Paltrow, every single time, whether you can put a picture out there?
No, because she doesn't.
Because you're her mum and you.
Yeah, she doesn't really understand it. But then I'm pretty sure she would rather our bills be paid for and have a roof over our head than for me to be struggling and be stressed and to continually have my husband work abroad. For us to, you know, we have a holiday that, you know, a lot of our money goes into savings to pay for our yearly family holiday. If we didn't have this income, we wouldn't do it. So it has changed our way of life for the better. It's changed, our household is a lot happier. I'm less stressed, my husband's less stressed. There is a whole bigger picture to this. And there, you know, every job there's going to be negatives and positives, and there'll be people out there giving, you know, Instagramming and this sort of job a bad rep. Of course there will be.
There was an article in the Wall Street Journal, in American parenting, because I lived there for a few years, it's very different in its approach. And this is a woman who loathed the idea of anything like this. Wall Street Journal. One bit I pulled out was, you might have to watch a hospital video about the dangers of shaking your baby just hours after the child is born, but there's no training for protecting your child's digital identity from online predators and data-hungry companies alike. Are we going down that road?
I think we are. I think we've lost sight of privacy. I think there's a huge difference between parenting in America and parenting in the UK, and that in America the rights are much more vested in the parent, the right and the responsibilities actually. I think in the UK we do take a more child-centric, we have to think of children's rights first. But I think for parents, especially parents who've got young children, and I think it's much, much easier when the kids are older and they can say, hey Gwyneth, can you take the photo down? For young children, they don't have that ability to articulate how they might feel about it. But it is really important that parents understand that they're giving away their child's privacy, they're building a child's digital profile, and they will have no way of getting that back. I think that's the other thing to think about. When a child turns around to a parent, they'll do one of two things. They'll either say, thanks for doing that, Mum, I'm going to continue that career and I love it. Or they're going to say, I really didn't like having my photo out there. Can you get them back for me? And that's going to be impossible. It's not going to be something that a parent can do. And I think that's something that parents really should think about.
I think that's a really important point. And I think we're all naive, those of us and not born into a generation where there was anything like this even envisaged and thought about, that every time you sign into something, you agree because you can't be bothered to read it. All kinds of things are going and happening with our data. That
What are the dangers long-term for the children, either in a situation outlined there perhaps by Vicky or otherwise, to their mental health?
Okay, well, I think it's a bit chicken and egg. So I think what we have here with you is somebody who's very thoughtful, respectful, and has got a very clear aim in what you're doing.
Yeah.
You want a happier family life, and you're achieving it through earning some extra money in order that you can be together and your husband doesn't have to be away so much. That's very different from people getting such a buzz from the number of likes they get, getting so addicted to that process that they lose sight of anything else. And that's what we call extrinsic motivation. It's being motivated by how you're seen, by being famous, by having this, that, and the other, new car, handbag, whatever, as opposed to what you care about in your life, relationships, friendship, that sort of thing. There's a really clear link between mental health problems and higher extrinsic motivation. Every single mental health problem just about is linked with high extrinsic motivation in the research that's been done. So we're fueling a world in which people are so driven by external reward, and actually big companies gain by this in a way that it's in their interest that our mental health is poor, so that we go online more and more and more. But actually that has a very profound effect. So it's very difficult to know, because the people who are more vulnerable are the people who are more vulnerable already. And so come from fragile backgrounds, maybe there's been abuse or trauma in the background, or even just fragility. They're the ones that are more likely to be drawn to this to get some rewards, and then it becomes a spiral.
I will, sorry, can I just...
Of course you can.
With my page as well, which unfortunately, because you can't share nudity pictures, you couldn't share, but I'm very body positive as well, and I hope that when my daughter does grow up and is in a world where there's this idea of a body image by people that come off of Love Island and want to promote these coffees and these teas and stuff, which is something I speak very strongly about, she'll be proud of whether she's a size 8, a size 14, a size 18. Do you know what I mean? So my page isn't just focused on working with brands and perfect. I don't show a perfect life. I will show my downfalls as how I feel about stuff, and I talk about my body in a positive way. You know,
that's atypical. That's great, but it's atypical.
Yeah,
no, it's an example to follow.
But what I'm saying, what I'm saying is, there's always going to be people out there doing negative stuff with social media and not using it necessarily in the right way. But there's also people doing amazing things with social media that do include their children. And my child will see when she's older and at school is that we speak positively in our household about bodies and the female figure, and you know, openly about mental health and stuff like that, and she'll be able to look at my page when she's 14.
Kerry makes a bit of money out of it. She sees it as harmless. It's just a little bit of fun. Aren't we going a bit too far on this?
I think the question is what is too far? When does that fun become exploitation? And there's very clear cases, especially in the US right now, of families who have been found to be literally abusing children to perform, to make sure that they, even taking them out of school, to be in their videos on YouTube, making millions of hits. And the question of, you know, how much does a child want to participate is not, doesn't come into their thinking. Your context of a loving family relationship is completely different. And talking about...
So we can't just say it's either harmful or it's just fun. It's a mixture.
There's definitely a mixture. There's a big spectrum. I think we, in a sort of Western democratic perspective, would always say the child has rights to privacy, also to participate, to freedom of expression. If they want to take part, this is something you can see children, sort of 9, 10-year-olds who are very articulate, talk about perhaps their gaming experiences, the fun, the entertainment they have online, and do that very, very well. There are children who, for example, Charlie's mum, the blog in England, and her son has a facial disfigurement. She's used that to try and campaign for awareness of children with that condition. And she involves him in their blogging, and she asks him if it's okay.
I must have a look at this.
It's terrific. It's a really lovely blog, and they have that discussion. She's also said, you know, she gets the most horrible comments on the blog. She gets also, and she makes very clear that she takes things down before he sees them, because he's not yet of an age that she thinks she could cope with that negativity.
Ever have people sort of turning on you and saying you're a bad mum for doing this?
I had one person say that she didn't agree that I put a picture up of Ivy asleep and she was going to unfollow, and I was like, that's absolutely fine, you know, and we did actually have a conversation. It wasn't like a trolling off like an unknown account.
Right.
And I messaged her and I said, she said poor thing, and I messaged her and I said, hey, you know, like, I just want to have a conversation about this and how it could make a mother feel, because technically you don't know what someone else is going through on that day and how it could actually affect them in a negative way. And she was very understanding and she apologised, and I understood her point. You know, there's a conversation to be had, and not everyone is going to understand it or agree with it. And I'm respectful to the other side of the negative side of it and the positive side of it. With
But no abuse?
What?
You haven't had abuse,
I've
because of what you're doing?
I've had abuse, but not being as a mum. I've had comments like you're fat and you're a weirdo and stuff like this, but you know, I'm strong enough to be able to take that. It doesn't bother me. That's why it makes me just want to do what I'm doing more, if anything, to change the way that people think and think that it's okay. But with YouTube, I deleted YouTube off of Ivy's iPad. I didn't want her watching.
Vicky, you want to say something? I can tell by the way you're looking at it.
I just think it's really early days of the internet still. It's still, you know, we're still figuring our way through. And I don't think, I think at the moment the conversation has been driven by parents about what's okay on behalf of their children. We haven't got that generation of adult kids yet who are going to reflect and say, do you know what, on the whole, it wasn't a great idea. And that being the case, I do think we have to proceed with real caution, because we just don't know. We don't know how this generation is going to feel about being, even if it's done for fantastic motives. And I think I reflect back on my time working at the Children's Society when we used to do a lot of content about young people that the Children's Society were doing fantastic, wonderful projects for. But some of those young people would come back when they were adults and say, I don't want to be portrayed in that way. That no longer fits with my lifestyle for whatever reason. You know, I want to go into a job where my identity needs to be private, or I just don't want to be associated with that past anymore. We are taking away the opportunity for children to make that decision when they're adults, and I think that's something we should think really, really carefully about.
At the risk of trying to perhaps exacerbate what some people see as a problem, I'm going to ask our director to put up the picture of Gwyneth Paltrow and Apple once again as we come towards the end of the
Do you have her permission though?
That's why I say there is a risk in this. Okay, so we're going to look at that picture, and I'm going to read you a comment here from somebody called Dean Rogers. This is in the newspaper story I read. It happens to be a librarian in New York, and he put things, the paper said, in perspective. And this is his quote, that Paltrow, he wrote, was, quote, carrying on the proud tradition of parents mortifying annoying their children since day one of human existence. And he wrote, hang on in there. We don't have, you're shaking your head.
I am, because we hear those kind of back in the day, my mother used to get the baby photos out and embarrass you when your boyfriend came round, and that was all true. But we're in a different world now. We're talking about hundreds of thousands, millions of people having access to that data and having no way of knowing what they're doing with it, to your point about some people doing really not very nice things with it.
Yeah, I agree.
Different world.
If only we had the time to continue this conversation on camera, we will continue it, I know, away. Good luck to you and your family.
Thank you.
Kerry, thank you very much for coming on. Fascinating discussion. Appreciate everybody's input. You've been watching Roundtable. My thanks to you for taking the time to do so. I'm David Foster, but it's a massive team effort. So from me, from everybody behind this programme, we hope to have your company next time. Goodbye for now.